great name, says they're Wilks players. Exactly. Wilks is
Yeah.
the new coordinator, and he's got guys. I mean, look, if it's the Bill Parcells theory. Hey, man, if I'm going to be responsible for the meal, I should be able to have a say in who's buying some of the groceries, right? And it's the same deal with Wilks. Hey, man, if you're going to hold me to a standard, at least let me get a couple of my guys. Now, Hartsfield's a solid nickel corner and a core
Mhm.
special teamer. That's really what he is. He's a great athlete, really good against the run and the nickel. He's a really good blitzer off the edge. He's a really reliable tackler. He gets to his spot in the zone efficiently. The issue is he's not great in man-to-man coverage, and that's why he's a special teamer fill-in guy. But he's a high-energy guy that Wilks likes. And as Raj just stated, they don't know who's going to play in what spot. So you bring in Isaiah Oliver. He can play outside. He can play inside in the slot. You got Womack. He can play outside. He can play inside. Lenore can play outside, can play inside. You don't know when you get to camp who's going to shine. So you get a bunch of athletes, throw them in there, and see how it all works out. But I really like the move because I think, one, Wilks is getting a guy that he likes. He knows how
Mhm.
to utilize. He knows what his defense is. He likes to run a lot of cover three. He feels like he's going to bring in DBs that he feels like can play that zone really effectively, really fast, and have mirrored type coverage up and down the field. So, I'm all for it. Now, it's not Isaiah Hartsfield Miles Hartsfield is suddenly they're going to the Super Bowl, but
No.
in conjunction or in addition to Isaiah Oliver and what they do in the draft, I think I like it. I like it. I like the fact that he's a premier athlete coming from a scheme that he's going to be familiar with.
Correct.
And, the one thing about the Niners secondary, if you're looking at it on paper, they got a lot of young guys right now, and they've got some holes that they're going to address in the draft. So that is going to be a really young room. So the
Yeah.
veterans who are in that room are going to have a huge responsibility. So that's why I think they're hand picking. We want Tayshaun Gibson. We want
Mhm.
Miles Hartsfield because they want guys who can play the system right now, but also create the culture in that room because that culture went out the door when Mosley left and when Jimmy
Yeah.
left. I mean,
Yeah.
not that DB coach has no control or anything, but that's where your culture was made. And before that, Tart. Now those guys are all out of the room. K1 was another big culture guy.
Mhm.
In the last couple of years, you've lost your entire culture of your secondary. Now you're going to go into the draft, look for a lot of young guys. You got to have some veteran examples that you really believe in their play and who they are. And I think this is an example of what that's about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why bringing back Tishon Gibson was huge because
Yeah.
they knew they were going to lose Ward. So at least you have one key veteran. And like you said, Steve Wilks is going to bring in his guys. I mean, that's what D'Amico Ryans is doing. He's taking all the Niners that he's familiar with because he's starting a new regime. You got to get players that can buy into your system and lead, your new group of guys. And again, we're going to have a lot of young rookies. You got to have people that are familiar with your system. And if Steve Wilks knows he can trust this guy, then it should be a fine pick. I mean, even the Titans, they're signing a bunch of former Niners because Rand Carthon's over there cherry picking 49ers. So that's what you do. You bring in people that you're familiar with. I expected the 49ers to have some Carolina guys. And if you really think this team, if you watched the Panthers last year, they were actually good down the stretch. That's when Steve Wilks took over, and he's our new DC. They were winning games at the end of the season with these players. So I'm all for it. I wish we would have got a Brian Burns, but I mean, I'll take Isaiah. I'll take Hartsfield.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you have Brian Burns come with you? And Sam Darnold was a big part of that, by the way,
Yeah,
down the stretch.
4-2.
Okay. So the other rumor over the weekend was it Schultz that had this one
Mm-hmm.
that Lonnie Johnson the Niners were looking at Lonnie Johnson, who's a big corner, played at Kentucky,
Yeah.
terrific athlete coming out, and now has kind of played some downs at free safety and in the slot. And the nice thing about Lonnie Johnson, he's a big corner who now is transitioning either inside to safety or maybe even going to play a little nickel. When I heard that, I was like, you know what? I'd be thrilled by that just because you can never have enough corners, especially veteran corners. Right now they have Charvarius Ward and Lenore and Hartsfield, who's probably going to be your nickel, and Isaiah Oliver and Ambry Thomas and Womack, and so that's six. Which is that's not it's not like they're naked there, But at the same time, you definitely need to add a couple pieces on the corner. I don't know. What do you think of Lonnie Johnson? What do you think of the rumor? I would like it just because I think if you could go into the draft not needing a corner at all, that's a way better position to be in, because otherwise you're going to have to wind up reaching for one. You see teams do that a lot in the NFL draft. They start reaching for corners because they get real thin. So I would like the idea of Lonnie, just so the Niners, could, if they want to draft a corner, they can get the guy they want instead of trying to saying, "Oh, we got to have a guy. We got to have a guy who can play right away."
Yeah, absolutely. I think that same concept when we talked about edge rusher, if they can get a veteran edge rusher and they can get a solid cornerback going into the draft, there won't be as much pressure on having to knock it out of the park. You can stack some talent that can be depth, because the 49ers absolutely need depth at all their positions. A couple years, I mean, not just a couple years ago. I remember for years I've been sitting here going, I need corner. I want this team to have corner depth, corner depth. The year we went in with Josh Norman and Drake Kirkpatrick as our quarterback 1 and 2 needs to tell you everything you need to know. You have to have solid depth. You have to have a contingency plan, because Richard Sherman didn't come back that year. Emmanuel Mosley was there, and then he got hurt. Jason Verrett got hurt, and we were down to Kirkpatrick and Josh Norman. No disrespect to them, but it was absolutely dumpster fire at secondary that year. We have to make sure you get depth. Lonnie was a good athlete in college. I followed him a lot in Kentucky. I remember the year he came out, 2019, or the year that Bosa and everybody came out. I remember scouting Josh Allen in 2019, his teammate, and I saw a lot of Lonnie Johnson on the film, and I was like, okay, this guy's not bad. Good athlete. He's still young, and you're right. He's a versatile player. What did we just talk about? The 49ers like Swiss Army knife type guys. You add him, he could compete. He can be depth. If there's an injury, plug and play. That's the 49ers strategy. We've said it many times here. So definitely would like to have him, because it makes your draft a little less pressure cooker situation. Again, there's a lot of talent in the draft, but you're not going to draft everybody that you have on your board. You're going to miss on some. You might reach on some. It happens. Maybe the 49ers can trade up and get a premier position if they don't have to go and sign all the positions that have holes. So maybe they go get Lonnie Johnson. They're like, you know what? We're not as pressed to get a cornerback. Let's take some of these third-round picks that we have and a player, and boom, move up to the second round and go get that right tackle that you need. So that would be smarter in my eyes. I would love to get Lonnie. Again, he's not like a name that you're like, oh my God, they just got Lonnie Johnson. They're going to the Super Bowl. No, but it's a good depth piece, and you absolutely need depth in the NFL with injury. So, yeah, go ahead and do it, Niner. John Lynch, make the move.
I'll tell you the other thing about Lonnie Johnson. He's a Gary, Indiana kid who is, 6'2", 215 pounds, ran 4.52 coming out. Doesn't deep speed's not his thing. 153 as his 10-yard split though. Pretty good quickness. But he was a track athlete. He was went the JUCO route, Garden City Community College. I liked him in the draft. I mean, what really stands out though, long arms, really long arms, has experience both on the corner, lots of experience on the corner. That's his background, but now also has experience at free safety, which is great. The versatility is great. But also what you're getting one of the NFL's best edge kick blockers. This guy comes flying off the edge and is really, really has a knack for blocking kicks. That, you get into a big time situation and you're looking for a special team play. It's nice to have a, long corner who is great at firing off the edge and blocking kicks. I mean, every little edge matters when you get into a big time playoff game or a Super Bowl situation. So I would love that. I'd love to see them go that direction. And then they could focus more on the edge rusher class in the draft, and they don't have to necessarily say, well, got to have a corner.